Saving the Bees in Australia with Simon Mulvany, episode 102.
Welcome to the KM102. Hi, welcome to another episode, and this episode we are talking to Simon Mulvany from Australia, who has a website called
Save the Bees.
Awesome, and this is a bit of a cautionary tale about consumer awareness or buyer beware.
Absolutely, and this is episode 102 of our Beekeeping podcast. And with special thank this week to Graham, who's been supporting the KM102 Buzz for over 19 months.
Yay! Thanks, Graham. And we hope all is well with you. We're thinking of you as we have been. Take care out there and know that you're on our minds.
Absolutely. And if you consider what we do valuable, please consider supporting us at kiwimana.bz/banana.
This is definitely a cautionary tale, and I think beekeepers in New Zealand, you need to listen to this one because this is all about looking after local.
Absolutely, and it kind of shows you the problems if you do start allowing imported foreign honey into the country, all the issues they're having in Australia with it at the moment. And I'm Gary.
Yeah, and I'm Margaret. And yes, we touched on this on episode 101, didn't we? About Manuka labelling and all that kind of thing. So this is really a warning, eh?
Absolutely. And we are beekeepers from the hills or Otaki Ranges, and our podcast sometimes gets political, as this one is.
Yeah, we're in the wild west coast of Auckland in New Zealand, and we're in the middle of the last month of our summer, I guess, coming into autumn. But boy, she's a perler out there, isn't she?
It's a beautiful day out there. Great day, great country, no imported honey.
Yay!
And the show notes are kiwi.bz/Simon for this one. And this was recorded in January 2017. Anyway, thanks for listening to our show. We know life is busy and crazy, and we appreciate you've taken the time to join us today.
Yes, and from listening to Simon and his passion, I think you'll find out that we do need to look after our local honey and our local beekeepers, and also just have a bit of patriotic fervour for your own country and what that country is and how unique we all are and how we need to value that, in my view.
Absolutely. Simon is an outspoken beekeeper and a consumer advocate from Melbourne in Australia. Through his work on his Save the Bees website, he has created a honey map for all Australians. He's being sued for injurious falsehood and defamation by Capilano Honey Limited.
Whoa, that's heavy stuff, isn't it?
It is indeed, and we discuss this and more in this week's interview. So, Simon, what do you know about the beekeeping industry in New Zealand?
I'm absolutely really interested. I think Australia is maybe, 10 years backward from New Zealand or 5 years, and I think we can learn a lot from your industry. Like one thing that worries me, and I don't know how you guys think about it. Someone said that, I think I read that Comvita has 33,000 hives in New Zealand. Is that right?
Oh, probably, yeah, probably that many. Yep, I would say.
Yeah, and then, so the company owns the hives, and then someone else wrote to me and said that we call them 4 to 8 visas or something, or immigrant visas, and they're able to get Chinese people working at the apiaries. So I just thought that business model of a corporation owning the hives with foreign workers, and then the honey goes overseas is, I don't really like that business model, and I can see Capilano trying to replicate it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, so I've sort of been doing my research this week, and they say that. And I put it up on a sort of commercial beekeeping page, what people think of doing that.
Yeah.
And nearly every commercial beekeeper said, Australian workers are lazy, we have to do it. I think they're 4 to 8 visas. So it was, and look, I get people writing to me overseas asking if they can do some work experience or help out. And I always read what they have to offer. And I can see a positive side to it, but I'm petrified. Well, what's happening in Australia now too is a lot of foreign investors are buying apiary sites and running their own bees and then exporting it. So if you're going to use foreign workers, foreign-owned hive, and exporting the honey, it's going to be a really sad state of affairs for the future.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's so true. So true indeed. So who are Capilano Honey?
Yeah. So Capilano, I guess they're the Comvita of Australia, or they're probably a bit bigger. I think they're the only listed honey company in the world.
Yeah, and I think, doesn't Comvita, they've got some kind of deal with them as well, haven't they?
Yeah, there's something happening between them both with the medicinal honey industry. I think from what I intuitively understand is that I think that the word Manuka might start to become a bit of an issue for Capilano.
Yeah.
Because, they're buying apiary sites. Look, you're limited with national parks. It's probably the same way it is there, and there's a limited area off, where bees can be put into national parks, and Capilano seem to be buying all those sites up. And so you've got a state where the corporations are going to sort of own the supply of this medicinal honey.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the sort of story behind this defamation thing going on?
So I wrote a couple of articles about Capilano. I don't know if you've scrolled through my page, but it only probably makes up 5%. But Capilano 2 years ago was voted the most trusted company in Australia. No one knew that they were importing Chinese honey, and to the extent of the Chinese honey they were importing. So I started to write articles about, and look, if you Google Capilano honey, you can see other journalists have attacked them, probably because I've had the social media presence. It has had more of an effect. I wrote one article about how imported honey could bring diseases in it, like foul brood, and I think that first one might have had 200,000 views or something, and lots of comments. And then I continued to sort of peck away at the company, and then it was a bit of a surprise. I just received a summons to appear in the Supreme Court. It was about 300 pages long. And I know several other people have been threatened with litigation from Capilano, and they all sort of folded because, they're scared of their assets being taken off them, whereas sort of money's not really my objective when it comes to bees. So I said I was happy to take them on. But they're suing me for, one is defamation to the CEO, Ben McKee, which is, in my understanding, talking to my legal team who are representing me pro bono, they're frivolous claims. It was all targeted to scare me and get me to, stop writing negative articles about what they're up to. Ultimately, what Australians are disgusted with is that a company they trusted is importing lots and lots of Chinese honey, relabelling it, not only selling it to us, but exporting it. I don't know what the laws are like in New Zealand, and I know you're stricter with your honey imports because you haven't got the diseases we have here, but and you kick up a bit of a fuss, but it seems to be a free-for-all here, and you don't have to label your honeys with country of origin.
No, in New Zealand we don't allow any imported honey at all. So
yeah, so I quite often write at the end of my stuff, look at New Zealand, their clover honey's going for $14 or $12 a kilo or $10 a kilo, and whereas Capilano are paying the beekeepers here $4.50 a kilo for the same honey. And we don't have Varroa either, so that should sort of fetch us a higher price in a way because we don't have the chemicals being used. Another big issue I see is the amount of pollination money on offer. And so you've got bees going from the almonds then to the national parks and just being moved around so much, spreading disease at the same time because they're malnourished. And then you've got a situation where a lot of people are preventative dosing with antibiotics here.
Yeah.
And they're banned there too, aren't they?
They are.
Antibiotics?
They are. Yeah, we don't use antibiotics at all.
But you don't have European foul brood either, do you?
No. I saw that it was just announced that it's been discovered in the Northern Territory as well, November.
Well, and this is a disgustingly scary thing that goes on, is when guys want to take bees, between borders, I've heard that they just, one of them will just go plant a disease in the other area, and then that enables them to move their bees into that area.
Oh, really?
So,
have you got any proof of that, or that's?
I haven't got proof of that, but I've certainly got people, naming names on the phone to me and saying who's done it in the past and why they've done it. Which, you've got some. You're dealing with some pretty ruthless people in the beekeeping industry. Yeah, I think, and money brings out the worst in people, unfortunately. And look, looking at Capilano, their share price has really taken a dive this year, and I would think it is because of the bad publicity that they've got. But I don't blame me for that. I blame their behaviour for that. And the day of social media and WikiLeaks and things getting out, you can't hide things from the public anymore. And I think they've really been counting on the ignorance of their consumers, and now their consumers are waking up. It's a couple of people, like the ABC article that you read, and they try to say the same thing: Simon's hurting the industry, but the feedback I get back from whether it's Jodie Goldsworthy or Kim Fuster in Western Australia, a lot of or John Edmonds in Melbourne, who are all pretty big packers, they say, thank God you've done this. And it's really only Capilano that are suffering. But in terms of, I think Singapore have, and Asia have started, really looking carefully at our exports, because I think they had no idea that they were buying back Chinese honey relabelled.
It's crazy, eh? So what are the labelling laws like in Australia?
Oh, they're shocking. I think, I joined up to get all the latest information on labelling laws and the complexity of something. And one of their sort of PR people wrote to me, well, we mix with too many different countries. We can't put the countries on one label. I said, are you serious? How hard is it to put Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, if that's what you're using? And Australia, that's just 4 words. I said, it's a disgrace. Why would you blend, 4 different honeys from around the world together? But I think, the global honey price last year dropped and was around $2 a kilo at one stage, I think. And so, obviously it's in their interest to bring this cheap stuff in.
Right, and so they don't label as imported at all in Australia, or do they just?
Oh yeah, they're meant to, and what they're meant to label it with at the moment is local and imported ingredients. So they don't say the country of origin. So that's really what I'm pushing for, country of origin labelling. But then there's a new law coming in. I think they've got 2 years to implement it, but they've got to put the amount of Australian in the honey.
Okay.
And Aldi recently put that on the honeys they were selling. 80%, only 20% was Australian. So that sort of gives us, what... And look, Capilano go at me for everything. And I said, in one of my articles, it was 80% foreign honey in their Alauri brand. And it's one thing they didn't challenge.
Well, I guess the answer is to support local beekeepers, eh?
Yeah, so that's what I finish with in my stories every time is I've created that honey map. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have. Yeah, it's a good idea.
So, I'm in the process of trying to, I'm working with a software company to turn that into a phone app and just try to make it really simple process to buy honey from your local beekeeper. And I think in the end, those systems, as we've seen with the Uber, I don't know if you've got Uber taxis over there now.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
But they've just changed the whole system for the better, disruptive technology. And I think the more, sort of corrupt these big supermarket chains and corporations behave, actually empowering quality producers to be able to get their food out there, because they're going to lose their clientele.
Sorry, is there any hope that the imported honey will be banned eventually, or not?
Well, like, I've had a few mediations with Ben McKee, and he said, maybe we could fight for a ban of imported honey. He said the thing will be that it will be very expensive to buy honey then. But, the stuff people are paying, not much for probably isn't even honey anyway, a lot of it. So I've got I'm really pushing for a ban, and Jody Goldsworthy from Beechworth Honey is pushing for a ban.
Yeah.
So, in Western Australia, the imported honey has to be cooked over 65 degrees for 6 hours or something before it goes on the shelf. But I think it's different in Victoria. So all that honey, could be having, could have foul brood in it. So
you don't have foul brood at the moment?
Well, we do, but people are concerned about, bad beekeeping practices and leaving honey out. But what about badly disposing of imported honey?
Yeah.
It's you go to a tip, and no one really ever completely finishes their jar of honey. And I know if I leave any honey on the table at my house, the bees will be foraging off it pretty quickly.
It's true. If they have a drum or something that was damaged, and they just throw it away and it leaks out. Well,
and then a lot of beekeepers who have bought containers of Capilano say that there's always residue of honey at the bottom of them, and quite often their bees rob them. So it's I just really, really dangerous practice, I think, this in importing honey and in such large quantities.
Absolutely. So how's this case going, and how do you think it's going to end up?
I would think, I don't think, for me, intuitively, I would doubt that they'd go to trial. I think the bad publicity would just kill them. I think they're in a lose-lose situation. If they, I don't think they possibly can win, but if they did, I don't think they'd have, I don't think the population would be happy, because they just see me as someone who cares about bees and is fighting to improve the labelling laws. And the other thing is, I've lived quite a modest existence, so I don't know what they'll try to sue me for. I've already taken down certain articles, and one of the major ironies was they didn't want a few of my articles getting out. And then there was another journalist, I don't know if you've read his articles, he calls himself the Kangaroo Court of Australia. He got hold of the court documents and released all the articles that I did take down. And his posts even went more viral than my initial post did. And I think they got shared something like 250 or seen 250,000 times, or maybe even shared that much. His article was called "Capilano Admit That They Sell Toxic and Poisonous Honey." But what happened with my case was, I said, while we mediate, I'll take down the articles. But Capilano sort of refused to. They kept on getting adjournments of the case so they could keep my articles, down forever, and just sort of, because it cost me money to get to Sydney and fight the thing. But I think they're very shocked that someone's taken this on for me pro bono, and I've got one of the most senior counsels in Australia. So I think you see. I don't know if you've seen there that I'm suing Capilano as well.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's
so they're suing me, and then so what they did is they said that a judge had found my articles were false, but there's no judging. No judge has ruled anything on any of my articles. So that's basically what I'm suing them defamation for. But I can't see me not winning that side of it, and then for them to, like, I guess what they're trying to get me for is saying that they're using the words toxic or poisonous.
Yeah.
And then for me, and I don't know if you probably have this issue, the whole world probably has this issue, but of Roundup being in honey. Well, I think it would be very, very hard in Australia to find a honey that doesn't have residues of Roundup or neonicotinoids in it.
Mm.
And so I'm at sort of liberty to use those words. If it did go to trial, I think what would be on trial would be agricultural chemicals in honey, which for me is two birds with one stone in the fact that I'm trying to put pressure to get neonicotinoids banned, and I'm not a fan of Monsanto. So, but for the industry in Australia itself, the last thing I want to do is put people off purchasing honey. Yeah. And I've done a good job with the honey map of getting people. So, like, I just think the owner of Capilano, or the major shareholder, is Kerry Stokes, and he's a billionaire. He owns TV networks here. He's renowned to take on frivolous things to the end. So, but if he's stubborn, I think the whole industry will get really hurt by this situation. But I think the best thing for them to do would be to mediate with me and our legal team, and I think that will end up happening.
Yeah, I hope it all works out for you, man. And so what advice have you got for other bloggers talking about Capilano? Is it...
I think it'd be good to read that Kangaroo Court's article. Capilano admits that they sell toxic and poisonous honey, but because he's done a really thorough job at following the story. But basically, I'd be asking and telling other bloggers how deceptive these practices are and how much they hurt the small beekeeper. Initially, a small beekeeper wrote to me and said, I'm used to selling honey in my small town. Every year I harvest at this time of year, and the local supermarket will put this Lowry, which is owned by Capilano brand, for sale at $7.99. There's no way I can sell my honey as cheap. And so my kids go to school and the kids are saying your dad's a rip-off. But if that honey was labelled Chinese, it would be very easy for the kids and the other families to realise that it wasn't the same thing. Mm. So this imported, I'd be saying to other bloggers and other people, this imported honey, it is not of the quality of Australian honey, and it's hurting local businesses.
Well, that's the thing. I would have thought a lot of local Australian beekeepers would be against the fact of the importing of the honey. Well, I guess they are, aren't they?
Oh, they are. Look, there's probably about 50 beekeepers, or maybe the people who don't use social media and haven't read any of my articles and are in Capilano's sort of stable. And these corporations, they work in a way where they pay beekeepers in advance, I think, and there's quota systems and things. So they're sort of tied in and their loyalty's there. Mm. Whereas, so the Capilano contract beekeepers, and look, Capilano have spent a fortune on and I don't know if you've noticed, but if you Google my name, Capilano come up on top. And if you Google, Save the Bees, Capilano come off. And so they're using Google AdWords to advertise on everything that I'm doing, and they're spending sort of a hell of a lot of money to try to help their image. But they can't hide by the fact that they're importing, millions of kilos of honey and relabeling them as product of Australia.
Yeah, that's terrible. And have you got proof of that relabeling?
Oh, yeah, they admit that. So if you scroll through my Facebook page, there's an article I wrote last weekend about a new brand they brought out. I think it's called Sunny Flow. they brought it out in Western Australia, and someone did their research and found out it was Capilano that were packing it, and they're selling it as product of Australia. So they haven't even bothered putting from local imported ingredients.
And did they test it and prove it was from other countries, did they?
Oh, no, they admit. I just rang Capilano and said, is your Sunny Flow honey local? And they admitted it's not local.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they shouldn't do that. And so they're labelling it as a product of Australia.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And the honey they export is the same. They don't put from local imported ingredients, obviously, because it's being exported, but they write product of Australia, but it's actually a blend of Chinese honey and Australian honey.
Do you have any kind of legal thing as far as consumer, the Consumer Acts in Australia that it's mislabelled? Is there any kind of law against that?
Oh yeah. So if you read that article that I'm mentioning, the lady who purchased it has gone to the ACCC, which is a government body, and they're in communications in regards to that specific purchase. I think, look, for me, the law's an us, and I know this might seem a bit strange to other people, but if rather than going through the government, which I don't trust at all, and I think, the proof is the labelling laws that have been lobbied for, my better way is actually writing to the consumer and getting this consumer to not buy their honey.
Well, I mean, surely if they're labelling as something as Australian and it's not Australian, that's against some kind of law, isn't it?
Well, no. Well, they know how to work. Yeah, like they're very capable of manipulating the laws, and so they lobby governments, these big corporations, to relax the laws. Like even the CEO of when I had mediation, he said, "You go to the local supermarket, Simon, and most of the food on the shelves is Chinese." But no one knows that. He goes, "Why do I have to be the only company in Australia that labels their honey Chinese?" So it's got to be around the board. But, you go to the supermarkets here and there might be 6 or 7 different labels, and most of them are Capilano.
Yeah, that's...
So you've got Smith's, Barnes, Lowry, Sunny Flow. I think they do the generic honeys as well. So people write to me and say, "Oh, bugger Capilano. I'm buying this brand," and I'll have to write back and say, "Well, that's actually Capilano too. You're better off, going to your local apiary and getting your honey direct." But we've got one company that's been fighting for years to improve the situation.
Yeah.
And that's Beechworth Honey, and they've always been Australian, and Jodie Goldsworthy's been trying to campaign for the last 10 years on getting this Chinese honey banned or imported honey banned.
Yeah, or at least labelled, for consumers.
Well, yeah, it seems a no-brainer that it should be labelled with country of origin. And some guy wrote to me the other day and he said, "Well, think of all the small businesses you're hurting, Simon." And I was like, or the beekeepers you're hurting. And I'm like, well, in my own head, I only run 20 or 30 hives, and I don't sort of rely on it for my money. But if I did, what Capilano are doing is devastating for me.
It just seems crazy that labelling laws allow that to happen.
Well, it's crazy, but when you think of the TPP agreements and globalisation, the business model they're really working at is whoever's got the most money gets the quality, and whoever's got the least money gets the least quality. You've got a situation like the cherries here. Australia had the best season in years, but there was no cherries for sale because they were all going straight to China.
Yes,
and
we have similar things.
And you must know that with your Manuka honey. A lot of that would just go straight to China now.
Yes.
And I think the Chinese are really eager to get clean honey, so honey from eucalyptus forests or national parks. And that honey that used to go to Australians now will go straight overseas while we get the Chinese stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy. And it's just toxic honey. What actually was that? What was the story behind this?
That story was, there was a story that News Limited did last year saying that there was alkaloids in Australian honey and that they could cause you cancer. I don't know if you could Google that article. Anyway, a lot of commercial beekeepers contacted me. It was a heartbreaking, really dangerous article for the industry. And so I spoke to another guy in the industry, and he said, well, Simon, it's not actually the Australian honey that has got the alkaloids in it. It's the stuff coming from overseas. So I wrote an article saying it was the toxic stuff. Capilano was importing toxic honey, and that went viral. And my story was, meet your beekeeper, ask what the bees are foraging on, and then you've got no need to worry. So it was a really positive article I wrote about Australian honey, and I blamed the toxicity on imported honey. So a few people have misinterpreted my use of the word, but basically, in consulting to my legal team, my lawyer said something which is quite sensible, which is you might, if you eat bacon every day of your life, you'll probably die 10 years earlier than what you would, but you can't call bacon poisonous. And then we spoke about Roundup, and he said, well, how sure are you that Roundup's in honey? I go, well, Roundup's in nearly everything these days, in bread, and I go, there'd be Roundup in my honey. And I know in the recent statistics in America, even the organic honeys were coming up with Roundup in them. So in terms of toxicity, I think that's what we'd be looking at.
So they did testing on some honey and discovered this, did they? The alkaloid things? Or?
In alkaloids?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I thought it was a beat-up. I thought the alkaloid story that News Limited run, and if you take your time to research it, because you've got to read between the lines with media. It really tried to turn people off honey completely. And for me, I thought the media moguls might be having a fight with each other.
Yeah.
And that's why they released the story, because it's really old research.
Oh, okay.
That they were counting on.
Yeah.
So it was a real blow to the industry. That story that came out.
Yeah.
And, there's no doubt that the journalist would have got death threats and things like that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's interesting times, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for coming along and clarifying the article for us. That's awesome.
Yeah, great. Well, if you need anything else, I'll happy to send it through.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Wow.
Phew. That's a big one, isn't it? And I think it definitely means we have to be more aware of what's going on here in New Zealand, because goodness me, if that happens here, phew.
Absolutely. He's definitely a man of passion, and I think it's great. He's doing all that work, so check him out at Save the Bees. And
I think that he definitely needs support from his beekeepers, and keep up the good work, Simon, because, if we don't stay strong in, what we believe in New Zealand, there is a thing called monopoly, and there is some legislation that's supposed to stop that, but is that really being enforced? That's my question in this whole scenario, don't you think? Absolutely. And thanks for listening this week, guys. And if you enjoy what we do, please consider supporting us at Patreon, which is kiwi.bz/banana. We've got a lot of great Patreon followers, haven't we? It's awesome. Yeah, thanks, guys. And yeah, this one's a good one, and we hope you gave you some honey for consumption from your respective country. Absolutely. So check out Simon's site. It's bethecure.com.au. That's his URL. Or he's on savethebees.au on Facebook. Awesome.
So check them out. Until next time, we'll be back soon with episode 103.
See ya.
See ya.